One of the most convincing arguments in favor of using a shotgun for home defense is the sheer devastating power of 12-gauge buckshot. These shells are loaded with a volley of small lead pellets. The size, quantity, and velocity of the pellets varies depending on the load. The most common type of buckshot used for defensive purposes is 00 or double-aught. Each pellet in a shell of double-aught buckshot is 0.33 inches in diameter. Most double-aught loads contain 8 or 9 of these pellets, which exit a shotgun barrel anywhere from 1,100 to 1,600 feet per second. Normally, I'm not a fan of the term stopping power, but there's really not a better way to describe the fight-ending potential of a well-placed round of buckshot. You're going to have a tough time finding any recorded instance of an attacker taking more than a single hit before going down. But just like a lot of other aspects of the defensive shotgun, there's a lot that's misunderstood about buckshot. Some people question whether it's accurate enough or can hold a tight enough pattern to be used for home protection. And that makes sense. If the shot pattern is too wide or unpredictable, that lowers your odds of being able to reliably hit the bad guy in a vital area. And it also becomes a huge liability to anyone else in the home. So it's good to at least question whether buckshot is a precise enough tool for the job. The best way to find an answer to that is to pattern a few loads at the range with your home defense shotgun. And all that means is that you set up targets at various distances and fire a couple of shells to see how the buckshot performs with your specific shotgun. And you want to use distances that match what you could possibly encounter inside your home. So for example, for me, the longest shot I would possibly have to take in my house is from the end of one hallway to the far side of my living room, and that's about 12 yards. So using a Beretta 1301 tactical semi-automatic 12 gauge, I set up targets at 3 yards, 6 yards, 9 yards, and 12 yards, and pattern a couple of loads. The first load I tried is this Federal PowerShock double-aught with 9 pellets. At 3 yards, both shots made one big hole, and this is pretty much what most loads will look like when we're this close. At 6 yards, we can see it spread out a little bit. We have the holes from the 2 wads on the outside. They're not really deadly, but the individual pellets spread out a little into a nice pattern right in the center. At 9 yards, the spread is more significant, but we're still well within the 8-inch center of the IDPA target. And at 12, we finally have a spread more like 9 inches from end to end. Next, I tried the Federal with their special flight control wad, and this is the 8-pellet double-aught load. At 3 yards, it looks similar to the other load. We have 2 distinct holes from the wads, and the pellets all went through the same holes. At 6, we're still pretty tight. It looks basically the same as 3 yards. And now at 9, we can see where the wad separates from the pellets, but we still have 2 very tight patterns. And finally at 12, we can start seeing some holes from the individual pellets, but each group is still about the size of a fist. So obviously buckshot can hold a very tight pattern, but it's really dependent on the load you're using, and the longer the distance you have to cover, the more difference there's going to be between loads. Part of the reason for this is just the way different shells are designed. Some of them are really simple, like this load of S&B buckshot. It's actually got a transparent shell so you can see the components inside. It's got 9 plain unplated lead pellets sitting on top of a very simple wad that separates them from the powder. When this shell is fired, the wad will push the pellets out of the barrel, and as the pellets are trying to get out, they'll sort of slam into each other like a traffic jam, and that's gonna deform the pellets just slightly so they won't fly quite as straight and you get a wider pattern. Then you got something like the Federal Flight Control, which has a few features to help create a tighter pattern. First of all, it's got a buffer in between the pellets. It's just granulated plastic, and it's all contained inside this shot cup part of the wad. And this specific wad is designed to hold the pellets together for just a split second after it leaves the barrel, and then the wad sort of flies away slowly. You get a much tighter pattern that way. On top of that, these pellets are plated, which makes them harder so they don't deform. To give you more of an idea of just how much the spread can vary depending on your ammo choice, I patterned a few more loads with the same shotgun. This time I just fired a single shot at 5, 10, and 15 yards on a big NRA B8 bullseye target. First is that S&B load that we just looked at. It's pretty tight at 5 yards, but it spreads out quickly and covers 11 inches at 15 yards. This one is Hornady Critical Defense. It's got some similar features to the Federal Flight Control, and you can see it keeps a pretty tight pattern. A couple of pellets went wide on the 10-yard target, but the spread was still within just 5 inches. And here's a 12 pellet load from Noble Sport. The recoil was pretty brutal on this one, so I wouldn't recommend it for self-defense, and the pattern wasn't great either. It was just under 9 inches at 10 yards, and at 15 yards, it's almost throwing pellets off the paper entirely. Now personally, I prefer the performance of a round like the Federal Flight Control, but not everybody wants a pattern quite that tight. If it's a little wider, then you do have slightly better odds of hitting the right part of your target if your aim is less than perfect. So I get that. I understand both sides of it. I'm not going to get into that debate today. As long as your pattern is not too wide, then it's probably okay. But even if you do like the results that I got from the Federal Flight Control, it doesn't mean it's going to pattern the same in your specific shotgun. The pattern size is going to change depending on the barrel and the choke and lots of other factors. So you really have to try it out in your gun. But fortunately, it's really easy to do, so get out to the range and try it out.